shows of praise to say, hey, this is exactly the type of performance we're striving to achieve as a company?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Definitely anything to do with performance appraisals or any, I'm trying to think, if you get a bonus for maybe making commissions, anything like that. Or even, on the negative side of things, if you've been talked to about poor performance or tardiness and coming to work on time, that all involves performance management. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing, Emily.
I just
Mhm.
wanted to add to Emily's point. What comes with rewards would also be expectations and goals to be able to base those awards on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Richard. So has anybody been in a job where they weren't really sure, other than looking at the job description, what exactly was expected of a leader or a supervisor? I'm sure we've all been in positions where we're not really sure, what is expected of us other than showing up on time and kind of doing the daily tasks that we're assigned. And that's oftentimes, it can be a miscommunication or lack of communication on the part of an employer or a leader. And so it's really important that, if you're in a position where, you're working a job, that you're clear on what the expectations are of you. And so it's important that those conversations are being had. And even in the textbook, it said that I believe it says that that's not always the case. A lot of times it's unwritten expectations. So, it's important to have those conversations, even though they can be difficult. And a lot of companies have what we call performance appraisals. So that happens like on an annual basis where you sit down with your employer or your leader and you have the conversation about, here's your job description. What are the things that you're doing in your job description? Are you doing them well? Are you doing them better? Are you doing them poorly? What can you improve upon? And kind of setting goals for the next year. So goals could be things to do with extra training and development opportunities. They could be, if you're working in a call center, increasing the productivity of call handling, things like that. If you're working in sales, it could be increased sales or increased leads. So performance management really includes all of those things. So informal feedback, goal setting, formal performance evaluation, and employee training and development. So you've probably heard of SMART goals before, and the textbook does talk about SMART goals. Does anybody remember what the acronyms are for SMART goals? So, yeah.
Sorry, I can get the first two for sure, but I think
Awesome.
specific and measurable.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
A, I think, is attainable.
Yeah, you got it.
Realistic.
Sorry, go ahead.
Time-oriented.
Could be for measurable.
Yeah, timely. Yeah, absolutely. Good. So why would it be important for these goals to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time and set in a time frame that's timely? Because we want to be able to achieve them, right? So if they're not specific, then what are we working towards? What's the purpose of even having a goal if they're not specific? If they're not measurable, how are we going to know if we've achieved them? Attainable, well, obviously we don't want to set goals that aren't attainable, because that's something that isn't smart and is something that can really be defeating. Relevant, well, if it's not relevant to something that I am going after, then what's the purpose of doing it? So relevant, for instance, if I'm setting a SMART goal for myself and the goal is not related to my work, then why would I bother setting it? And then time frame, you don't want to set a goal that's 5 years in the future. You want to set a goal that's maybe 6 months, so that you're motivated to continue to work towards it. So oftentimes SMART goals are set by employee and manager in coordination together. And oftentimes they're done so in a performance appraisal setting. And it's important that a supervisor is consistently providing feedback to employees on how they're doing. So just sitting down once a year and having that annual discussion really isn't enough. What you need to be doing is having regular discussions with your leader, or your leader needs to be having regular discussions with you so that you know where you stand and you know where you are in terms of achieving those goals. And Carl agrees with me. Sorry about that. In terms of training and development, so one of the most important ways that performance can be improved in an organization is through training and development. And the goal of training is obviously to help you to learn to do your job better. So we know what training is, but do we know what development is? Anybody have any thoughts on, what development could mean or could look like?
I'm just going to take a shot in the dark. This might be wrong, but development, when you think of training, training is obviously to ensure someone is capable of doing the job, while as development might be providing opportunities to help that person expand beyond the skills that they were taught in training to kind of evolve and become a better employee, but also a better person.
Yeah, absolutely. You nailed that 100%. So today I had a development opportunity for my academic advisors that are in my office. So we obviously academic advising is usually a matter of advising students in terms of career opportunities and courses that they'll want to take in order to be able to graduate. But one of the opportunities that we had for development was for them to deliver a training program to students on how they can develop their learning skills. So that's an opportunity that I'm offering my staff in terms of their own development. So the training part of that would be to go to the training to learn how to talk to students about the learning skills, and the development would actually be delivering what they've learned in the training to the students that they'll be working with. So does that make sense? But yeah, development's definitely the opportunities. So it could be a secondment. So sometimes we might see people go off on a parental leave, and an opportunity will come up for you to fill that position. And so it's not a permanent position, but it's an opportunity of development where you can take on some additional tasks, try them out, build your skills, and see if it's something that's of interest to you. So benefits of training and development, benefits to organization. Obviously, it affects the strategy, and any good organization has a strategy on how they're going to accomplish their goals. Effectiveness, so, back to the example of a call center. So if we're training our employees on how to handle calls and how to expedite calls and deal with customer service, it's going to increase the opportunity for them to be effective and to be able to turn around the calls in an effective manner. Employee recruitment, engagement, and retention is important, because if you're not developing your employees and giving them an opportunity to grow, that's not going to meet either their intrinsic or extrinsic needs. So as humans, we're always kind of looking for opportunities to grow our knowledge, and that looks different to everybody. So it might be formal or informal education, but we're always looking to expand our knowledge. And so by allowing employees to have the opportunity to engage and take advantage of training and development opportunities, we're holding on to those employees for longer. And obviously, like I said, the benefits to employees are intrinsic benefits, because they're gaining new knowledge and skills, and it's not a mundane task where they're constantly doing the same thing day in and day out. They're actually using their brains. And then extrinsic would be an increase in pay. So that would be, a secondary benefit. Most employees are driven by intrinsic benefits more so than extrinsic benefits, and especially in the case of millennials. So that would be mostly everybody who's in the workforce right now, or entering the workforce right now. So there's several benefits to training and development beyond, you know, how it benefits the employees and the organization. So there's obviously benefits to society. An educated and employed population improves the economic and the standard of living within the society. And it also helps to improve health and safety. So, you know, less accidents happening because people know how to use the equipment that they're being tasked to work with, and follow the rules that are in place within the workplace. So when we think of training and development, it's interesting to know, was anyone surprised when you read the textbook that just over half of workers in Canada have access to employee-sponsored training? And that Canada isn't one of the largest leaders in investing in training and development for employees? It's kind of disappointing when you think about it, right? You would think Canada, being as established as it is, that, you know, there'd be more emphasis on this. I think it's growing. Well, the textbook says it's growing, and we know it's growing, but it's growing at a slow rate. So the top skills that are focused on in training and development in Canada are thinking and problem solving, customer skills, essential skills, oral and communication skills. And this is good to see because they're not focused on one specific area of the economy. It's skills that are transferable and can go from employer to employer. And we do see a lot of employees making shifts between places of employment or positions, more so now than ever in the past. And so knowing that the focus is investing on these types of skills is important, and it makes sense given the type of employees that, you know, are working in the economy right now. So is training an investment, or is training and development an investment or an expense? So we know that organizations can see it both ways. What are your thoughts?
I think it's an investment
Mhm.
because that's how employees will be developing and their performance would be improving, as well as that would bring more benefit to the company through
Right.
increased outcome, increased sales.
Good. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it depends on how you're looking at it, from what perspective. As an organization, you can see it as an expense up front, but then it's an investment in the long term. And so sometimes what'll happen is that employers will have employees sign contracts, learning contracts, so that, you know, if we're paying for you to do your MBA and it's a $50,000 degree, then you need to stay with us for 5 years following that degree in order for us to reap the benefits of what we've just paid for you. So sometimes you'll see that. A lot of employers have benefits to employees where they can access financial reimbursement for pursuing formal education. And sometimes what they'll do is partner up with something like continuing studies and say, you know, we have 15 employees at IBM that we'd like to have trained in customer service. And then they'd make that arrangement so that it's a little less expensive than if those 15 employees were seeking that education on their own. And it makes sure that the training is developed to meet the needs of the employer. So we're starting to see a lot more of that as well in the field of training and development.
All right, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, how do you think that's changing, since a lot of the workforce is going from like full-time to more part-time and like contingent work options, where companies usually only allow full-time employees to be able to access these training opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to turn it back to you and ask you what you think, Ramneek.
I'm not sure. I think that if an individual wants to stay with the company and kind of develop into a certain role, they should be given the opportunity, even if they are a part-time individual, but then again get that contract signed that they go through with that training and development, that they have to stay with the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes what we see, based on my experience in human resources and recruitment, sometimes what we see is staff will negotiate that in their contract. So if you are a contract employee, you can negotiate benefits. You can negotiate educational reimbursement. And so we see that happening a lot, especially in specific skill areas. So there was a big boom when COVID hit for educational instructors and designers. And so because there was such a need for them, that would be the perfect opportunity for somebody with that skill set to be able to negotiate that. Now, if I was somebody who was, a janitor, I might not be able to have that, opportunity to negotiate. But if you're in an area where you're doing tasks that are high demand, and you're in a position where you can negotiate for that, definitely, it's an opportunity. Another thing that I've seen employers do in the past is if an employee was a contract employee and completed, say, an MBA, I'm just using that as an example because it's a degree that is quite expensive, time consuming, and an attractive degree. What they would do is if an employee was a contract employee and completed that, and then they were hired on full-time in a continuing role contingent on completion of that, then I've seen some sort of level of reimbursement towards that education, as long as it wasn't far off from the time that the person was employed full-time. But it's a great question. It does happen quite often, actually. And you don't, it's not something that you always stop and think of, that you could negotiate something, especially when you're going into a contract position, but anything's game, really. And I think that really says a lot about you as an employee to the organization, if that's something that you're willing to negotiate for, especially over pay, right? But yeah, thank you for the question. So the organizational context of training and development. So it's kind of a hierarchy. And what happens is the business strategy, so the organization's strategy influences the human resources strategy, which is right underneath the business strategy. And then the human resources strategy influences the learning and training strategy, which obviously influences training and development. So we saw, did everybody have a chance to read chapter 1 of the textbook and read about the police and how they had invested in the mental health training? So we saw, that the police, obviously, the police association saw that the business strategy needed some focus on mental health. And then so human resources, you saw it play out in the example in the case study, how it came to be that these training and development programs started to play out for mental health assistance. And it actually leads in nicely to the next example, which is the ISD model, where a needs analysis was done and then a program was designed and delivered. And then obviously they went back and evaluated it because they talk about how the police officers are doing in terms of rolling out the training that they've learned and the skills that they've learned while they're out on the beat. So the ISD model is a streamlined, kind of an easier version of the ADDIE model. So needs analysis is done. And it's important for that step to happen because before that happens, you don't really know if training and development is something that can actually fix the problem. So in that example of the police, it could have easily have been that, the police needed to do something entirely different. What it might be, I don't know. But what a waste of time and resources it would have been if they had gone through the process of not doing a needs analysis, but just rolling out training and then evaluating and finding that the need for mental health assistance through the police wasn't being met because that wasn't something that was identified in the needs analysis. So I hope that makes sense. I think that was a really good example of how everything can kind of come together really nicely and play out and, you know, later be evaluated to be determined that that was exactly what that situation needed. So we won't spend a lot of time talking about the 80 model, but we will definitely be talking a lot about the ISD model throughout this term. So it's really important that you become familiar with that, but we'll break it down in the upcoming chapters in terms of how to conduct a needs analysis, what design and delivery looks like, and most importantly, evaluation. It's often something that's easily forgotten. You know, we've done our work, we've delivered the training, you know, we don't need to evaluate it. But evaluation is always important because the next time you go to deliver that training, you need to make sure that the way you're doing it is effective. So again, going back to the police model, you know, we saw that they brought in actors to play the role of civilians, and that was one of the pieces that was the most effective in that training. So that's the design and delivery piece. So all of these pieces are equally important and very time sensitive in terms of when they're done in the order that they're done in. Does anybody have any questions about that model? Like I said, we'll be talking about it throughout the term, so it's not something that you need to know a lot about right now, other than ISD is important. So again, we talked about the needs analysis, training and delivery, and training evaluation. And it'll be interesting to hear as we get into this a little bit deeper, what area you're most passionate about. Just like I'm interested to hear what area you're most passionate about in terms of human resources. But I really like the training evaluation piece, but some people really like the needs analysis piece, and just as many people like the training, design, and delivery. So it'll be interesting, especially as you work in groups, to see who kind of takes on the ownership of each of the different pieces. So like I said, we're not spending a lot of time together tonight, but I just wanted to kind of go through the highlights of what I thought was important for chapter 1 of the textbook. And we'll do this on a weekly basis, but don't feel like you have to be here every week. I will be recording it and I'll be posting it. So if you have other obligations or commitments that are going on, don't feel you need to be here every week. I understand that you're busy folks and that you have other obligations that are going on. So does anybody have any questions about the format of the course outline, anything to do with the assessments? As the assessments come up, we'll be talking about those too and getting into greater detail about them. So don't feel like you're ever alone.
Professor, sorry, I just wanted to quickly ask, would you be able to go through the groups just because there weren't any last names and there's 2 Danielles and 2 Emilys?
Sure.
So I was just a little confused as to what group I was in.
Okay, I thought I caught both Emily's, but definitely I know I didn't catch both Danielle's. So what I'll do is after I get off tonight, I'll go on and update that for you, if that's okay. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Danielle. Yeah, so if you didn't see under the announcements, I posted the groups and they're just randomly assigned for people to each group. I'm sure we'll either have some additions or some attrition, and that'll affect the group format, but I thought it was important to get that settled right away and everybody know what group they're in, so that if you wanted to get a head start on assignments or the assignment that you're working on as a group, you can do that. So as soon as I'm done here, and I have a horrible memory, Danielle, so as soon as I'm done here, I will go back and do that. I guess it's part of the aging process, right? Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, well, I'm very accessible. So if you have anything during the week, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy, like I said, to talk by phone or by Zoom or by email. And I will leave that with you for tonight. And anyone going to watch the hockey game now? Yeah, good. I'm glad some people are. Well, whatever you have planned for the rest of the night, please take good care, stay safe and healthy, and I hope to see as many of you as possible next week, and I'll be talking to you throughout the week. Okay, have a great night, everybody. Bye.
Hi, Professor. Have a good night.
Bye, you too.